Hey folks, how's everybody doing out there? Hope y'all are doing well. It's been a cloudy, sort of rainy. I say rainy, not too much rain, but it did sprinkle a little bit here today. But we're loving it because it's cooled things off. Here in the Philippines, are you thinking about retiring and moving outside of your home country? Are you thinking about moving to the Philippines? If any of those topics interest you, then stay tuned. It's going to be what they call a talking head video. The scenery's not going to change. So just push play. And unless you just absolutely love looking at my beautiful face, you can just listen to this one because the scenery is right here in my studio. I'm going to talk about a couple of case studies that happened recently. One to a friend of mine, a second one just a dude who I ran into in the swimming pool. Had a brief conversation about what they were doing in the Philippines. But basically, a lot of people who watch our show, you're either planning your retirement, you're doing research for your retirement, you have a Filipino wife maybe, and it's your dream as soon as y'all get your finances and everything in order, you're leaving America, the stress of America with the inflation, $20 Big Macs, the crime, and everything that's going on over there now, and you're moving to the Philippines. Okay, hey, whatever your dream is, life is short. You gotta live it out because at some point we all go down, and I think as Americans and people from the West, we don't think about death enough, right? You just think you're going to live forever. You got to worry about that 401k and that Social Security and how much you're going to get and blah, blah, blah. You never really consider, am I going to live past 50? Am I going to live past 55, 60? It just never factors in. Nobody ever talks about death and dying, right? I'm getting a little bit off topic. But basically, you have this dream of moving to the Philippines, but a lot of people, you've only been here for 1 week or 2 weeks vacation, or you've only been here 2 or 3 times, and you have this perception of what daily life is going to be. And I've said it a million times, being on vacation for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks is totally different than everyday life in any country you visit. If you've been to the Bahamas 3 times on a 3-day trip, it's very easy to dream about moving to the Bahamas. I mean, I'm a dreamer. I did the same thing, and every time if I went to Key West, I fell in love with Key West, and I'm like, man, I want to come live in Key West. I was looking for jobs and doing research. Same thing, we went to Panama City. You have that honeymoon phase with that location you go to on vacation, and you just want to never go back to the grind. But everyday life is not the same as being on a vacation, a short vacation with a pocket full of money and no cares in the world. You showed up with a backpack, you don't have any cares in the world. You got more money than time. Okay, but when you go to live somewhere, whether you're a bachelor or especially if you have a wife and kids, it's totally different than being on vacation. So story number 1, case study number 1. Okay, a friend of mine has a Filipino wife, been coming to the Philippines for about the same amount of time I have. Let's just say 15 years. Multiple trips. Most of the trips, the trips before you meet your wife, where are you at? You're in Angeles City, Makati, partying. Then you meet your wife, and you end up pulling 2-week trips to visit her family, right? So either way you want to look at it, even we use this term 1-week millionaires, 2-week millionaires, basically due to save up all year. They get 2 weeks vacation, and they blow it out, right? Well, it's sort of the same whether you're running Walking Street chasing women or you go to your wife's village or to visit her family, you've got a pocket full of money, and it's a good time. Maybe you're staying at a hotel or a resort nearby, so they're not really, getting on your nerves or what have you, and it's a wonderful time. And so you go back to the States, stack of bills, all the problems, and you're just dreaming about moving to the Philippines. Well, these two gentlemen that I'm about to talk about basically came here on a fact-finding mission, one fact-finding mission trip. Not that it would be the only one, but come here on a fact-finding mission, and after their fact-finding mission, their recon, so to speak, their retirement plans are derailed. They're totally changed. They're no more. So let's talk about my first friend, okay? My first buddy. Yes, ma'am. Folks, I'll be right back, because Calamansi, if I don't lock the door to my studio, this is what happens. Just a minute. Okay, so the big interruption was they're ready to harvest the peanuts that Grandma planted out front. And I said, look, I've already got this camera set up. I've got everything locked in. I'm not moving the camera. Harvest the peanuts in the morning, where I can film the peanut harvesting activities. Anyhow, back to case number one. A friend of mine is retiring in a few years. Filipino wife, a child. And their plan for years now has been to move to the Philippines as soon as he retires. Just waiting on retirement. We're going to move to the Philippines, buy a house, build a house, what have you, and live happily ever after in the Philippines. Okay, and again, he's made multiple trips, but 2 weeks, 3 weeks, stuff like that. As we get older, a lot of you, including my buddy, his main concern, top concern about anywhere he moves is healthcare. Why? Because we're getting older. He's got some health conditions, medical issues that he wants to be close to competent medical care. Close to a real hospital. Now, when I say real hospital, all right, I'm up here basically 5 hours, give or take, depending on traffic, 5 hours north of Cebu City, where I consider that Cebu City has real hospitals. You've got that big new one called Mayo, not the Mayo Clinic, it's got 2 A's. You've got something Chua, I don't know how many hospitals, and I've never been in any of these in Cebu City. But when you look at the building, you're like, damn, that's a proper hospital. Whereas our little hospital in this town looks like a MASH unit. It looks like an aid station. Now, it is what it is, and a lot of these islands have these little small hospitals. They have doctors, they have a crash cart, but there's no surgical procedures. I mean, they can do stitches, but if it's anything serious, you got to get to a real hospital. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyhow, back to his top concern is health care. And while he was here on a recent trip, and again, this is story time, and I don't tell short stories, and I'm not in a big hurry. He's here on a recent trip, fact-finding mission, doing what you would do, look at property, look at houses, take a look at the schools, all the things that you do, right? And during their trip, his wife comes up sick. She's got stomach ache, diarrhea, basically traveler's diarrhea. Usually he's the one who gets screwed up every trip. And this trip, his wife gets screwed up. So she's to the point where they're like, look, let's just take you to the hospital. Take you to the hospital. Maybe they'll prescribe some antibiotics or what have you. Because here in this country, you have to have a prescription to get antibiotics. Years ago, you didn't have to. They changed the rule. You can get antibiotics at these little smaller pharmacies. They'll sell it to you. And I'm not advocating you do anything illegal. I'm just telling you facts. But I don't trust the smaller pharmacies because, you know, maybe that medication's been stored improperly. It's been in the sunshine. There's no shrinkage, right? They're going to sell that stuff. Maybe it's close to being out of date. If you buy any medication here in the Philippines, I recommend you go to the bigger pharmacies, you know, in the malls. I mean, legitimate pharmacies. And if you go to those legitimate ones, they're going to require a prescription for something like antibiotics. The smaller ones, no, but you're rolling the dice. And out of personal experience, I've bought some doxies in the past here that were combat ineffective. Okay, so I can tell you personal experience. They were either fake, they were out of date, they were improperly stored, they were combat ineffective. To the point that the first thing I did when I got to Bangkok airport is hit the pharmacy inside the airport, pick up some doxies, and I was popping doxies like Skittles due to an acute medical condition I found. Why I gotta talk like that? We're all adults. Okay, I caught the collapse sleeping with bar girls up in Angeles City. All right, I didn't go to the hospital or to the doctor and pay 500 pesos and get a prescription. What did I do? Went pharmacy hunting until they sold me something and the shit didn't work. There you go. Life ain't always pretty. Okay, so moving right along. His wife is sick. Okay, let's go to a hospital. Now they're in Manila. I'm not going to name the hospital. Why take the risk, right? You know, some dude, a couple of cases in Thailand, a dude gave a restaurant or a hotel a 1-star review. Next thing you know, he's down at the police station, right? So no need to name the hospital. I'll just say that he did the research and come up with like the top 5 hospitals in the Philippines. They went to one of them. I guess that's vague enough. So he thinks he's in good hands. Hey, hit the taxi, get over there. His wife has a fever, stomach ache, diarrhea. You know, you don't know what's going on, right? Is it a virus? Is it just traveler's diarrhea? Is it bacterial? Who the fuck knows? I'm trying to watch my language. Since I stopped drinking, I'm really focusing on my language, my adult language, and cutting that out of my show. But hey, I'm a redneck every now and then. Can't help it. So they show up. And this is the flaw in the logic, right? They take her temperature, and she does have a fever. So instead of sending her to the regular waiting room, they're like, hey, she's got a fever, potentially contagious, right? Let's send her back to a room. All right, well, the experience starts out positive. But what they end up doing is putting her in a room with somebody on the other side of a curtain, you know, half sheet, what have you, that my buddy said sounded like had tuberculosis. Was over there hacking up a lung. So he's not a medical guy, but he's scratching his head like, wait a minute, you think she's contagious because she has a fever? You got one over here with tuberculosis. Hey, that's a great idea. Let's put them both in the same fucking room. Man, there we go again. Okay, so it is what it is. So she gets put in the room. About 20-30 minutes goes by. There's nobody coming in there. She's having the shakes because she's got a fever. She wants a blanket. There's no blanket. So he flags down the nurse, what have you. Hey, we need a blanket in here. You know, my wife is shivering. She needs a blanket. They scurry around. They come back and they said, I'm sorry, sir. And you'll hear this a lot in this country. Not available. There's no blankets. There are no blankets available. Blankets not available. It's a big hospital. He said, are you kidding me? He said, come on, it's a big hospital. There's blankets somewhere in this hospital. You know, please go find my wife a blanket. She's shivering. So, no results. You know, I don't know if they just ghosted him, didn't come back. Is that the term? Ghosted? I don't know. All these hip terms these days. Anyhow, they basically disappeared, no blanket. So my buddy, A-type personality, takes shit into his own hands, goes on a mission to find his wife a blanket. So he's going, hey, y'all got any blankets here? Hey, y'all got any blankets here? Going around. He's opening up doors, you know, to like supply closets and stuff, to the point he said security started shadowing him. You know, but he's raising a stink. I need a blanket. Hey, I'd be getting pissed off too. In a big old hospital. You mean to tell me that you can't find a blanket? So after he raises a stink, it basically creates a scene. I don't know, 10 minutes later or what have you, they did show up with a blanket, and he said, man, that thing was steaming. They must have got it straight out of the laundry, because it was a nice, hot, steaming, freshly laundered blanket. So they did get a blanket, but only after the girl sitting there for 30 minutes shivering, and people telling them, blankets not available. So they go along, and the nurse came in the room and said something about, what kind of medicine do you want to give her? And my buddy is like, what are you talking about? I'm not the doctor. Shouldn't the doctor prescribe the medication? And so he says, well, she's probably got, traveler's diarrhea or something. She probably needs some antibiotics, right? And to have this conversation, it sort of sounded to me like he was ordering off a menu. Well, she's got diarrhea. She needs something for that. So the nurse leaves out and apparently talks to the doctor, and the doctor writes a prescription for like 3 meds, and she comes back in the room. And during this whole thing, he said she never saw the doctor. So let me go to my notes here. I talked about that. Yeah, the doctor never saw the patient. Okay, now this is funny part of the story. Okay, here in the Philippines, there's security guards, posted at the entrance, the exit to the emergency room especially. You've got security at every entry and exit point, right? And mostly they're not there to keep people out. They're there to keep people in, to make sure that you pay the bill. And you can't leave that building in most circumstances until you show a paid in full receipt to that security guard. Now, you can't make this stuff up. Okay, it's cash and carry here. Thailand used to be like that, but now Thailand's a lot more relaxed, Map and Rai. If you go in there and get treated, you don't have the money, they'll keep your passport as a foreigner and let you leave, but they're going to hold on to your passport. Over here, like with her sister, when she had the baby, they couldn't pay the bill, they couldn't leave. They couldn't leave till they got that money, right? So that's security's jobs, to make sure nobody escapes without paying the bill. So she said the nurse started calling some dude's name. We'll just say Tonyo, Mr. Tonyo. Doesn't answer, looking around, Mr. Tonyo. Waits a little bit, comes back out, Mr. Tonyo. They can't find no Tonyo. So she has a conversation with the security guards, and they go off on a manhunt looking for Tonyo. Because this dude ain't rogering up, and he ain't paid the bill. So apparently they locate Tonyo. He's in the shitter. Now imagine that. You show up at a hospital, maybe your chief complaint is nausea, diarrhea, vomiting. So they go find this dude in the shitter, and when they're escorting him back, there's like one security guard on one side, one on the other. And he's saying, hey, I was in the bathroom. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't try to run off. I was in the bathroom. And the security guard says, well, you were in there too long. We've been calling your name. They've been calling your name, and you were missing in action, basically, right? Because his wife is listening, like laughing. And the dude's like, I was in the bathroom. My gosh, I had to take a shit. And so they're laughing at it, right? So, anyhow, at some point, let me get my notes here. I actually took some notes while he's telling me this story. I didn't want to forget anything. So just keep that in mind. You need to tell somebody if you're in one of these hospitals and you gotta go and make sure that they're aware. Hey, I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going to the shitter. My stomach's killing me. I might be in there for 30 minutes. I ain't trying to run out on the bill. Let the security guard see you go in there. You can't make this crap up, right? No pun intended. So anyhow, at some point, they're like, ready to go. They basically didn't get any treatment, never saw the doctor. They got a prescription for 3 meds. And they're trying to figure out at billing, they handed them the insurance card. Now let me back up. When they first showed up there, they asked them, hey, do you accept this insurance? Oh, yeah. Well, when they get to billing has no idea how to process this insurance card. Apparently there was a lack of communication from the intake to the billing, right? And so they're sitting there talking, and maybe they could do this, they could start the process, and his wife turns to him and says, they're never going to figure this out. Just pay the bill. Pay the bill in cash. I'm ready to go. So my buddy's like, all right, how much is the bill? We're just paying cash. Forget the insurance card. So it's $12,000 in cash. Now look, that might not sound, obviously that's not a whole lot of money for the States, but here it is. You go to a doctor, and for a doctor's visit, on average, it's 500 pesos, less than $10. For him to write you some scripts, check your blood pressure, basic doctor's visit. And they're in there for an hour, and it's 12,000. Now it is a private hospital, okay, so obviously the bill's going to be higher, but that just didn't sound right. It sounded like too much money. So my buddy looks down at the bill, and it's got 4 IVs listed clearly that his wife received 4 IVs, and she didn't receive any IVs. She didn't really receive any treatment other than checking her temperature. And so he brought it up, and they're talking about it, and his wife says, just let it go. We will be here all night arguing over did they give me those IVs or not. I mean, I'm sure she's like, hey, look at my arm. There's no puncture marks. I don't know. But his wife was tired of it. She knew the drill, and she's like, we're not going to win this. Just pay the money because I want to go. So he plopped down $12K, paid the bill for these 4 IVs and all this treatment that she never received. And they got the hell out of there. And that was their story. So my buddy says, I'll never go to any hospital again in the Philippines. He said that was the nail in the coffin. As far as our retirement plans, we're not moving to the PI. And both he and his wife are in agreement based on that incident, because he's got medical problems. So what does that mean? That means there's a potential that he's going to have frequent trips to the hospital. They have a small child, and basically said, I'm not moving to the Philippines due to lack of confidence in the healthcare system. Because he said if that hospital is in the top ranking hospitals in the PI, even that fact, if we'd had a true medical emergency, we would have died. That's his opinion. We're not moving to the PI. And so they looked at each other and they're like, okay, so where are we moving to now? So all of these plans that have been, all the research, all the planning, what city we're going to live in, it's over. They're not moving to the PI. Now they're back to square one saying, okay, where are we going to move, or are we just going to stay in America? Because of that, I would say that one incident, but actually, that's not the first bad incident that they've been through. Now, if you go back and watch a video, you know what? Here, boom, right there. You have to research that video. It's a story about where he went to a hospital several years ago. Same thing that she had, diarrhea, vomiting, just because he gets sick every time he comes to the Philippines. And the long story short, that's a funny story, but the long story short is he's got to hit the shitter the minute he gets there. There's no toilet paper. The bathroom is filthy as hell. Now look, I'm not saying you have to have toilet paper, right? That's a Western thing. I haven't used toilet paper in 15 years. But in a hospital, listen to the rest of the story. There's no toilet paper. There's no water. There's no sprayer. There's no bucket. There's no tabo. There is nothing in the bathroom, the CR, the comfort room at this hospital other than the crapper and sinks. and you got to do with explosive diarrhea, and he basically painted the wall, I mean everything, and then there's no way to get cleaned up. And his wife ended up going out and buying some damn wipes. I mean, he trashed the CR. But again, when you go to the hospital, it's not because you're healthy. It's because you're sick and you got a problem. And then one element of the story, they left the wipes and then came around and came back. Somebody had swiped the wipes. Somebody stole the damn wipes and act like they don't know who did it. And yeah, it was a horrible experience. And so you go reflect on that experience years ago, and then this recent experience, and he's going to be one of those people that potentially could be a frequent flyer at the hospital. It's not the place for him to retire to. Now, has he tried every hospital in the Philippines? No. Okay, I guess at this point he's been to 3 different ones. But out of the 3 he went to, he's changing his plans because that's important to him. That's the #1 priority on his retirement list. I know a lot of you are the same way. Healthcare is very important. If you live on one of these islands and you start having a heart attack, you're probably not going to make it, just like my buddy. Started having a heart attack in the middle of the night. The ferry doesn't run in the middle of the night. So he goes to the little local hospital, which is basically like an aid station. They have to wait till 6 in the morning. The ferry is coming. They see the ferry. They're at the port with the ambulance. He died right there in the back of the ambulance before the ferry could get there. End of story. They just took him back to this little hospital, and next thing you know, they're having a funeral, and that's the end of mission. Because there was no way off the island all night long. He just sat there and had a cardiac event until it took him out. Now, if he was living in Cebu City and got to one of these big hospitals, would he still be alive? Maybe. Maybe. Okay. So folks, I don't have all the answers. I'm just telling you stories. I just want to invoke thought. You know, for me, I'm a healthy person. I don't have, I better knock on wood. I don't have any health problems that I'm aware of. I feel great, especially since I stopped drinking. I mean, I feel like $1,000,000. I'm losing weight. You can actually see my jawline again instead of a big old pumpkin sitting on my head. So me personally, I haven't had that as a priority. I'm okay to live on an island. I'm okay to live up here 5 hours from a major city. But I'll tell you this, when our son had that febrile seizure and I thought I was holding a dead child in my arms, and trust me, my perspective and my view on being close to real medical care changed. And had we not, at this point, you know, basically figured out it's febrile seizures. It's all connected with fever. But if anything gets worse, would I continue living here? No. We would have to move closer to a true medical facility, and it would be Cebu City. So these are things to think about. All right. So that's his story right there. That's his opinion. And you can sit there and say, oh, this hospital I go to is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying there aren't good hospitals here. Like I said, that hospital in Cebu City looks brand new, and he might have had a totally different experience there. Recently, I was in a swimming pool at the resort and just happened to have a brief conversation with a gentleman from the States. And shout out to you, man. You asked me a bunch of questions. It was kind of funny. I'm always cryptic about who I am and, you know, what I'm doing. And everybody always asks these questions because they're curious. They're like, how are you living here? You know, how are you living here and I can't because I got so many bills in the States? How are you able to live here, right? So I get it. So he's asking a bunch of questions, and I'm being cryptic. And dude, if you're watching this and figured out who I am, it's just I was hanging out with friends and just didn't have time to get into the long story. But basically, what he said was him and his wife. This is their first trip to the Philippines in 11 years. Now I'm assuming that the last time they were here is when they got married, what have you, or he picked her up after her visa got approved, and they're young, they're in love. I mean, 11 years. This dude's probably 40, so, he's 30 years old. His wife's probably 25, what have you. So I would say that the last time he was here was when he was picking her up after her visa got approved, and then they've been in America ever since. So what's their perception of the Philippines? Their perception is what it was 11 years ago when they were young, probably just going around drinking, he was probably going around drinking beer. They were island hopping. Hold on, I got to plug this in. Hold on. Yeah, Steven Spielberg. I'm sitting here in my studio. All I had to do was plug in the power cord. That wouldn't have happened. I sat there and ran a battery down like an idiot. Anyhow, it happens. So back to their perspective, right? They were probably island hopping, just drinking, going out, eating, doing what newlyweds do without any children. That's their perspective. They moved to America. Well, he moves her to America. They have kids. Now they're locked into the grind. Big old mortgage, car payments, insurance payments, all that good stuff. And what do you dream about? You dream about escaping the matrix, escaping all those bills, all the craziness that's going on in America, from the schools to the political situation, which a lot of y'all do. You're just biding your time till you can get away from that. I get it. So I'm sure that they were the same way. And now that he's 40, say he can retire at 50, somewhere in there. Now it's time to start taking trips every year or every 2 years to start trying to figure out where they're going to go. And so this was his story. He basically said, man, he said, it's our first time here in 11 years. He said, this place is more dirty, more crowded, there's more trash, there's more traffic, and it's just a shithole. He said it wasn't like this 11 years ago. Well, I think that it was like that 11 years ago. I mean, is it still dirty, crowded, and trash everywhere? Yeah. But 11 years ago, I had the same opinion of Cebu City. That's why I never really spent too much time in Cebu City. It's like a mini Manila. There are places where there's more homeless sleeping on the streets than there were in Ermita. I think what it was 11 years ago, he's drinking and having a good time, staying at nice places, what have you. And you're just oblivious to all that. You don't care. But when you come back 11 years later with 2 kids and you're sober and you're doing a true fact-finding mission, where am I going to live? Are we going to buy some property? What city? And now all of a sudden, you're wide awake in the van looking around and you're like, wait a minute. How come I didn't notice this before? Well, you're probably drinking beer, sleeping on the bus because you've been up all night partying. Who the hell knows? So apparently they had spent 1 month there, and they were last few days of being here in the Philippines, and they were just hanging out at that resort, biding their time until they could get home to Nebraska. And they basically said, him and his wife are both in agreement. They're ready to go home, and they ain't moving to the Philippines. Well, and this is what he said. He said, man, Nebraska's not too bad. He said, I love my guns, my truck. He said, we love parks, taking the kids to parks. He said, sidewalks. He's like, holy crap, I never really thought about how important basic things like sidewalks are. but just being able to take the kids to a nice park where there's not trash everywhere, and a million people, sidewalks, the quietness, the cleanliness. And he said all of a sudden, Nebraska ain't so bad. We'll stay right there. And his wife, he says his wife is in full agreement. You know, and he said, look, yeah, there's problems. We can't put our kids in the public school. We got to send them to private school. And he mentioned something, I don't even know all this terminology, the crap that they're teaching them kids over there. And he said something. He said, have you heard of something? I said, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I said, to be honest, I really don't want to know. I don't want to be educated and waste memory space for people explaining to me the stupidity that's going on in the schools over there, what they're teaching them. I don't even want to know. I told him I don't want to know. He said, okay, well, I'll just tell you in a nutshell. It's basically making our kids stupid. That's what they're teaching them. These systems are basically making our kids stupid. I said, okay, that's all I need to know. Don't explain any terminology, because I'm still confused that people can identify as a fucking cat. I still don't get it. Think that's a joke. Anyhow, so that was his story. You know, sometimes you don't know how good you have it until you go somewhere else, and then you look around and you realize, wait a minute, fucking Nebraska ain't so bad. It ain't so bad. I got a good job. We pay our bills. We're safe. It's clean. Not a whole lot of people. So there you go. There's two totally separate people. Again, one's a friend, one's a dude I just had a brief conversation in the swimming pool about, that went on serious fact-finding missions in the furtherance of planning for their retirement, and looked around and just came up with reasons why they're pulling the plug on their dream of moving to the Philippines and retiring with the children. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody has a different perspective on life, on what's your paradise. One man's junk is another man's treasure. Is that the saying? You know, a lot of y'all think my women are ugly, and I think they're absolutely beautiful. And I'm glad you think they're ugly, because that's just less people sniffing around trying to play Captain Save-A-Ho and steal my ladies. So it's all about whose perspective. I always say, hike your own hike. You know, your retirement is your retirement. You don't do things based on what anybody says, especially me. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not retired. I'm just getting started in life. But for 15 years, I've been around mostly retirees over here in Southeast Asia. So I've heard story after story after story. You know, I did a poll one time, and I thought it was going to be one-sided, and it ended up being really split down the middle, 50-50. And the issue was, is it better to bring your children to the Philippines and have them grow up and go to school in the Philippines, or B, let them grow up in America and go to school in America? And this was several years ago, before a lot of these crazy programs started in the public schools over there. And it was split down the middle. 50% said, oh man, the schools in the PI are trash. You got to get them in schools over here in America. And then 50% said, oh man, keep your kids there. You don't want to bring them over here. There's school shootings or teaching this crap. It was 50-50. Who's right? There is no right or wrong. We all want to do the best that we can do for our children and set up the best scenario and situation, and everybody's situation is totally different. I think we can agree on that. So I found that interesting, because you know, a lot of stuff that you see on YouTube or anything online, what is it? It's the trophy pic. It's the picture of somebody standing next to a private jet that they ain't even never been on, or somebody standing next to a Lamborghini that's not even theirs, right? It's all a facade. Most things on the internet are a facade. I've quoted this tweet from a young black gentleman from over a decade ago It was pertaining to something else, but his quote was, his saying was, "Ain't nothing real on the internet, comma, homie, period." Just nonchalant. They're having this big argument over this long story, but basically said, "Ain't nothing real on the internet, homie. Why y'all getting upset?" Okay. I like to keep things as real as possible. Do you see every aspect of my life? No, you don't see every aspect, but I try to keep things as real as possible. Now, believe it or not, I don't watch videos about the Philippines. Why? Because I'm not interested in that topic. I like to watch camera reviews, documentaries, advanced propulsion systems. The last thing that I want to watch is anybody talking about the Philippines or retirement or anything like that. Why? Because this is what I do every day. This is where I'm currently at. I'm not interested in that. If I'm sitting in Thailand, the last thing I want to do is watch videos about Thailand. Sort of like a dentist wanting to go home and watch videos about some dental conference. I mean, maybe they do, but I see the thumbnails. And you see these thumbnails of everybody, why do people have to open their mouth when they take photos on YouTube? I still ain't figured that out. You got to open your mouth and you got to use the word insane street food, or foreigners shocked at Manila. It's all bullshit. Okay, they're trying to get a click. It's all, if you don't click on their video, they get no view, right? Everything's clickbait. The damn title and the photo is more important than the video. It's like you can't judge a book by its cover, but if it don't have a good cover, it ain't getting bought or pulled off the shelf. But it seems to me that people aren't like telling the true story, the real story, the full story, and they're influencing people. I don't want to say unfairly. Their influence is skewed because the topics that they're talking about is not everyday life. Does that make sense? So if you're planning for retirement, what do? Well, you don't listen to people who are traveling around the world. If they're in the Philippines for 2 weeks and then they go to this place 2 weeks, and don't listen to them. Okay, they have nothing to offer you if you're seriously planning retirement. Okay, you listen to a sampling of people like me that have been here a long time, that are telling you about everyday life. A sampling. Don't listen to everything I say and say that's the gospel, because my situation doesn't fit your situation. Take a sampling. Number 2, you need to come over here on fact-finding missions. If you're going to retire in 10 years and you're starting to lay down true plans, you need to spend as much time over here as possible. Not a 1-week millionaire trip in Angeles City and you got it in your mind that you're going to retire and live in Cebu. You need to spend more and more time. Not in the bars, not acting like a 1-week millionaire, and especially if you have kids. It's like my buddy said, you need to go there for 60 days at one point. Not even 30 days. You need to come here with your crew for 60 days. I realize a lot of people can't do that, but if you could swing 30, you need to rent an apartment somewhere comparable, or a condo or a house or an Airbnb that's comparable to what you would be living in if you moved here, and spend 30 days living like you live here full time. Don't go to the beach resort. Don't be hanging out at the malls every day, spending all your money in 1 week. No, experience the place for 30 days if you can pull it off. And a lot of you, what you're going to find out is this is not the place for you. And it's not just the Philippines. If you go to Guatemala on vacation, it's totally different if you're going to live there. So don't base your long-term planning decisions on a 1-week vacation to anywhere. Because a lot of you, if you came over here with your crew and spent 1 month, at the end of 1 month, you would be like these two case studies, looking at your Filipino wife and both of you in agreement, we don't want to move to the Philippines. We're quite fine here in America. Or let's pick a different country. And again, nothing against the Philippines. We could be having the same conversation if I were sitting in Guatemala, or if I was sitting in Cambodia, wherever, right? It goes along with my advice. Once you hit boots on the ground, you know, say you do close down shop and you show up here, a lot of people think, oh, I got to go buy a condo. The prices are going up. That's the worst thing you can do. You need to rent something for 1 year. You know, rent something for 1 year. And if you're still happy with the country after 1 year and that city after 1 year, okay, go buy yourself a condo. Doesn't make sense to me, but if that's what you want to do. But being a 1 week millionaire in Angeles City is totally different than living there on a budget when you retire. Because most of us, probably you, are not going to have the same income when you retire. And now you can't go to Walking Street every night and spend 10,000 pesos every night. Totally different, right? So folks, I don't know if this talk made any sense. I just thought that was kind of funny. You know, my buddy, after his trip, it was supposed to further, you know, it was supposed to like ratchet up, sort of kind of lock down where he wanted to live, where they wanted to live, and where they were going to look for a place. And instead of taking his retirement planning to the next level, it just trashed everything. You're not going to change their mind now. It's over. And this dude in the pool from Nebraska, you ain't changing his mind either. I think when he gets back to Nebraska, he's going to sit there and clean his guns and watch his big screen and probably clean his garage and wash his truck and thank his lucky stars that he pulled this little fact-finding mission instead of just closing up shop, taking everybody over. So there you go. That's my talk. Somebody say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or you're being negative. No, I'm not. I'm just telling stories. True case studies of people who don't, well, before these fact-finding trips, they were. That's all they did was dream about moving over here. Then they put boots on the ground, and it's not what they're going to do. It's not, they changed their minds now. So it's not what's best for them. And, you know, it's not failure. If you move out of your home country and realize 6 months later it's not for you, that's not failure. A lot of people look at that like it's some type of failure. I never got that. I never get that when people say, oh, you know, you couldn't handle living in the Philippines, or you couldn't handle living in Thailand, like it's some type of badge of honor. No, it's your life. If you don't like where you live, fucking move. I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's not success or failure if you can sit in Southeast Asia for 15 years. For me, this is where I like to be. I like Southeast Asia. But if I stopped liking Southeast Asia and decided to move to Guatemala, it's not like I'm a failure because I didn't stick it out here and retire, or, you know, I didn't die here and stick with it to the end. But a lot of these little jealous hippos, and I call them the jealous hippo expats, that's the way to look at things. Oh, you won't make it 1 year. So, what does it fucks that mean? If I don't like somewhere, I'm going to move. It's not failure or success. So if you come over here and decide it's not for you, that's not a failure. Okay? There's no t-shirt that says, you know, I survived living in the Philippines for 10 years. It's not the way it works. Life's too short. All right, folks, that's all I got. I know I'm rambling at this point. I don't have a script. I never have a script. I just got some notes on scratched out chicken scratch notes on a legal pad. And I think the gentleman was hunting and fishing too. I might be mixing up my stories, but I think the one guy in the pool probably was a hunter and a fisherman. And if you're big into hunting, ain't no hunting here. So if you're a hunter, you come to the Philippines, your hunting days are over. Okay, if you're big into guns, are there shooting ranges in Southeast Asia? Yeah, there's shooting ranges. You can go to the range, shoot guns. Several around Pattaya over in Thailand. There's one, I think there's one over in Angeles City somewhere. I've never been there. So if you're into that, that's still available, but you're not going deer hunting here. And in fishing, I can only speak from my experience about fishing. This ain't the place if you're a big fisherman. If somebody sent a message and said, oh, somebody's doing fishing, okay, I hope they are. But if you're living on Subic and think you're going to go fishing in Subic Bay, there ain't no fish. If you think you're going to go to a pond or a river or any freshwater body of water around here and go fishing, it ain't going to happen. Because if there were fish in there, they were fished out back in the 80s. There ain't no fish there now. So these little things that you think about, it's going to be a total lifestyle change. And if you're that type of guy, you might want to look at another country where those activities are plentiful. Hunting, fishing, stuff like that. All I hope to do is invoke thought. Folks, I'm going to conclude this because Forrest G's out there being rowdy. I guess the ladies are slow in their cooking. And he don't have a lot of patience when he gets hungry. So I'll go out there and help take care of the young man while the ladies finish up. Hopefully a wonderful supper. I'm sure it will be. Appreciate everything y'all do. Watching my videos, listening to my voice, comments, them thumbs up, thumbs down, all that stuff that helps out with that dango computer, man. You just click on there, hit that mouse. It's real easy, man. I'll see y'all on the next one, and peace out.